Estate Agency X, the UK's #1 estate agency podcast discussing the future of estate agency, entrepreneurship and business with hosts Mark Burgess and Rob Brady.
Welcome to this episode of Estate Agency X. Today we're talking to Tony Beales, who runs an estate agency called Millbanks. He's got 40 years of experience in estate agency, 30 years of experience of running a business. We really dig into some of the challenges that he's faced over that period of time. It's not just about led to glorious success. We talk about some of the more recent challenges that Tony's faced, how he's got over those, and how he's found himself back in a place where he's really enthused for the future of his business.
So Tony, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I appreciate it.
For our listeners out there, anyone watching, a bit of background on Tony, Millbanks. I mean, you've got decades to unpack, so where do we start?
You could go right back to the start if you want to. Back to 1984, yeah. So it's 40 years in February. I celebrated my 40th year in the industry. Seen a lot of changes in that time, and 30 years of running Millbanks this coming December. So, yeah, it's been a journey.
1984, can you imagine picturing this back in 1984? It'd just be like a little zoom into the future. People would be like, what is going on?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, can I start with a question?
I could sense you were there,
desperate
ready
to ask
go.
a question. So all that time in the industry, I guess my first question is, there's so many estate agents now. I mean, like, you know, if we rewind all the way back to the start of your career, obviously there was probably always a reasonable amount of estate agents on the high street, but, you know, there's so many estate agents that cover areas now. And probably, it's certainly in my time in the industry, which isn't as long as yours, but, you know, goes back longer than I like to admit, I can't think of a time previous to this where the public had less admiration for estate agents. So sitting inside the industry as somebody that has all of those decades of experience, has learnt things the hard way, as a multiple award-winning estate agent, what are some of the things that annoy you about other estate agents, and what are some of the things that you admire about other estate agents?
Okay. What, from back in the 80s or today?
Today, when you sort of look around and you think to yourself, like, that is what annoys me about estate agency and what gives us a bad name, and that is some of the things that are brilliant about estate agents.
I think one of the biggest things that really I struggled to deal with is people failing to communicate, and there are so many communication platforms out there for people to communicate on, not returning calls. That's probably one of my biggest bugbears. I know it's very simplistic, but it just winds people up so much. Yeah. And I think so. Communication is certainly one of the things that does annoy me about other agents. Obviously, that does fall into my lap a little bit when it comes to how I operate and how my business operates, because we are very hot on that. So.
Do you think that's just, I don't know why. I mean, has it always been like that for you, or do you feel like it's got worse and worse and worse?
I think there's probably with employed estate agents who obviously work PAYE employees working for a company. That I think that there needs to be more training and emphasis put on that side of things. I don't think there's perhaps enough of that. Yeah. In order to get back to, for people to be able to see and, have that sort of feel-good factor about an estate agent, because, I think that training is probably my second biggest bugbear as well. I don't think that, in my opinion, I don't think agents are trained well enough, or if they are well trained, they certainly don't sort of tend to implement it as well as they should do.
I've got a theory on all of that. I'd be interested on your thoughts on whether you agree with it or whether you see it slightly differently. And in a nutshell, the way I see it is that when I was an estate agent, I need a grey beard for this, don't I? When I was an estate agent, right? When I was an estate agent in, say, the 90s, because there wasn't so much technology, all you really had was communication. So you kind of had to phone people, right? There was
Telephone,
there was no messaging.
There was no mobile phone.
You had to have face-to-face. You either had to go and see a vendor
Yeah.
to have a face-to-face
Pick
conversation,
up the phone. This is what we still
or talk to a buyer.
we still
right?
reach out to today.
So all you really had was communication, and you didn't maybe even realise it because we weren't living in the world we are today. The first wave of technology that came along into a estate agency allowed us to do more volume. You know, you could have more applicants. You could maybe even have more stock, because when you only had 6 boxes in the paper, like, you know,
Yeah.
right? So you could have more stock, you could have more applicants, and you could store them all on a computer. But what it turned out the job into was kind of administration, like tons of administration and less communication.
Yeah.
And gradually, I think we're starting to now reach an age whereby agents can now potentially find some better uses in technology than creating tons of admin for them. They could actually get the computer to do the admin, so they can still do more transactions and deal with more stock and more buyers, but the administration side of the job can be done by the computer, and they could perhaps start to move almost back to how it was before, which is your job is to do the human bit.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you
And I don't
see
think a
it.
computer can replace that.
Not yet, certainly, and so it's not in the near future, but
AI might.
yeah.
But maybe. But I, you know, I can go around a house, have a great conversation with the owner, and listen to what the owner's criteria is, what their journey looks like, how soon they want to do bits and pieces, and so forth. And I'll think, I've got 2 or 3 people for this straight away. Now, would a computer be able to do that? Possibly, maybe. We don't know. But I'll tell you what, back in the 80s, I remember there was an agent where I originally worked, which was Colchester, and in Essex, and they were advertising property matching.
Right.
That was there. And it was, I can't remember what year it was, probably about 86, something like that. And I thought about that. I thought, how the information's only going to be as good as what they put into it. And obviously, technology back then, what we're talking about 40 years ago, certainly isn't what it is today. And I think I don't think it did that particularly well. But I still think that you've got a great estate agency, a great estate agent who understands buyers' needs, understands sellers' needs, and can have a great conversation. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess what I'm saying is that
That's why the human element is so important.
and I guess that is the job that you need to do, the value that you bring to the table. But you can't do it if you're in the office chasing up like 78 viewings to try and get some feedback.
Since I changed my business model, I've learned very, very quickly is that if you're going to be successful, you do the jobs that you're good at, and then you bring people in to do the other jobs. Like I've got a great VA who does all my videos, and she's amazing. It takes me probably about 2 or 3. I can do it, but she does it. She does great. She puts some great emojis.
But she
on
spends
there,
her time doing, right?
and she's really good at what she does. And so I would rather bring people to the table that are good at what they do, and then that obviously then complements my brand, and what I do.
Love it.
It's actually quite interesting what you were saying there, because more and more agents I'm speaking to have said that just having the matching with each other, or matching with vendor or seller to buyer, they said that so many clients they speak to don't even have that for many agents. Not even just a communication. I registered with this agent, don't hear anything from them.
No.
And the amount of people, like, what was the stats we've got in our database? It's like 20%.
20% of the buyers have got houses.
Has to sell, and it's like those are your prospects. So every time you're chasing out, you've got 20% of the people that you're registering on a monthly basis.
So that comes down to poor training, poor qualification,
or poor communication.
Poor communication, and
do you think the training problem though is that what we're talking about there, right? We've touched on 2 things that could easily be muddled up. There was an agent in 1984 that said he could do automated property matching. And clearly, whatever technology he was using at the time would be substandard now.
Oh, 100%.
You're talking about sophisticated property matching that will do a great job, that will take away a load of admin work and bring some value, so that it will then highlight to Tony the 20% who have got houses to sell, and he can do the human bit. So you're talking about two ways of working that are light years apart. But do you think that the training has moved on to be able to teach people that, or do you think that the majority of training, even if a company wanted to invest in training for their estate agency now, they'd end up getting trained on the 1984 method? Like, do you think there's a danger of that? You know, the trainers themselves like staying up to date
whether
with
it's
the
whether
training,
it's whether
if
it's
that
training
makes
on
sense.
whether it's training on being an estate agent or training on how to communicate.
Yeah, just
I think
isn't it?
training on how to communicate, I think, is really, really important.
Yeah.
And not everyone can do it.
Yeah.
You know, not everyone can have a great conversation with someone and
de-escalate
you know,
somebody.
people lack eye contact. They lack the being able to sort of talk with their tonality within their voice and expressing themselves. So I think there's an art to that as well.
Yeah.
So, and I don't think there are some things that you can't train.
Yeah.
You
So
know.
there's not so much estate agency training, more just like you say, communication.
Do you know what? I think, and I was told this a few weeks ago, and it's something that sort of stuck with me. And there's two really important criteria, I think, when I look to take an agent on: skill and attitude. I can train skill, I can't train attitude.
Yeah.
And I think if you've got someone with the right, you know, attitude to want to learn, then you can then train them.
Yeah.
Whether or not they're then still to deliver what you trained them, then that's down to the mentoring
No,
side
absolutely.
as
We
well.
have something similar, don't we? Like, you know, does the person have our values, and then beyond that, have they got the capacity to do the job?
Yeah, definitely.
You know, if they don't have the capacity to do that job, but they have our values, maybe they have the capacity to do another job in our company because they have the right values for us. You know, so. Absolutely.
But I think as well, it's also important with regard to the mentoring side of it as well, to encourage, support, and guide. And I think that plays an important role as well.
Yeah, because actually it's quite interesting. I'm currently doing a coach and mentoring masters effectively, and the three parts, one of the things they focus on is when you implement coaching and mentoring into a workplace environment or try and mentor people, what they try and do is seen as like an added onload to their job. And it's almost, a lot of businesses don't understand that is a time constraint. So if they're doing their day-to-day stuff, and then you're saying, right, you've got to go and do this training on top of what you do, they're saying that the most successful implementations of coaching and mentoring comes when we know we've got to do additional training, so we've got to relieve our workforce in some capacity to be able to implement the training, not as just as an added thing to just chuck on their plate, because the training never gets implemented because they're still thinking about, I've got to register buyers, I've got to call this thing, I've got to do this, I've got to
totally
do
relate to that,
etc.
but it's down to time and diary management.
100%. So you've been with us for quite a few years now, and obviously Millbanks. So what was the lead up to your 10? Millbanks is 40 years old, isn't it? You said.
Yeah.
And you're 30 years ago.
No, I've been in the industry 40 years.
Yeah,
Millbanks
so
is 30 years old.
30 years old. So what's been the process of Millbanks evolution, maybe in the early years, to give any guidance to anyone who's setting up a traditional estate agency, and then obviously we can discuss a bit more of like what's happened to Millbanks in the last few years.
Okay, so when I basically brought the brand in Attleborough 30 years ago, it was literally just me. I didn't have a huge amount of money to survive. My advert was literally, as you mentioned earlier, Mark, 5 boxes, black and white, in the back of the local newspaper. I couldn't go in the big one because it was too expensive, and I would just work with what I had. And I had a part-time Saturday lady who did the afternoon so I can get off and watch the football. And I had a part-time secretary who sort of answered the telephone in the afternoons, allowed me to go out and do my valuations. The mornings was just allocated to sales chasing with solicitors and phoning, following up viewings and things like that. That's literally how it was.
Smoking in the office, all allowed.
Do you know what? There's a picture of me. My mum will hate to hear this, but when we had our office, when I worked for one of the previous companies and all that, and there's a picture of me when my branch obviously spoke to my wife, went through all my photographs, and there's a picture of me in the office with an ashtray and a packet of cigarettes on the desk and that. Thankfully, I gave up smoking over 20 years ago, and I feel a lot better for it.
And was it the same? Were you in the same office as you are Millbanks has been, or was it?
No. We relocated into 2012. So I had 2 9-year leases, I think it was, on the original premises. That after 2 years got flooded because the guy upstairs decided that he'd go away on holiday and turned his
Challenges
heating
of
off.
business.
Froze, then defrosted, and with the whole place got soaked between Christmas and New Year. So then they brought in some dehumidifiers which dried it out, which was great, but it was a clay lump building, so it dried the clay out. So the building then became unstable, so they had to then pull it down. I then had to work out of a little side office. Literally, it was
Crazy.
tiny while they rebuilt the main office, and then we then moved back into the main office and they rebuilt the side office. And then in, was it 2011, I think it was, 2010, then there was a fire at the office, and I was in the Yorkshire Dales, just been to watch Norwich Carlisle, and got a call at midnight saying your office is on fire.
Not great when you've got paper-based office, really, is it?
Terrible. Yeah, it was, and the fire brigade did a great job, and no one was injured, hurt, and we were back trading within about a month's time. But yeah, these things come to test us, and yeah, that was a difficult time.
Was there anything in that journey whereby you would say, like, if someone said to you, okay, so 30 years of business, tell me, I don't know, narrow it down to like 2 or 3 things that you did either by accident or on purpose that caused a leap forward in the business?
Yeah, I mean, moving premises was a big one for us because prior to that, I'd opened up a sub-branch in a village called East Harling, and that was successful, but that was just at the turn of the banks crashing in 2008, I think it was. So we had a challenging 4 years there. It was low cost, but and then the opportunity, and the reason why I opened that was purely simply because my existing premises wasn't big enough. So and then the opportunity came round the corner for us to relocate. So I closed the Harling branch, closed obviously where I was because the lease had expired anyway, and bought freehold of where we are, which is 2-story, had its own car park, double fronted, gave us much more. So that was a big step forward, and it enabled us to take more staff on as well, and we did prosper big time from that.
Nice, love it. Was you at the time, you couldn't have known that was going to go well? So was you a bit nervous about it? I mean, obviously it worked out well in hindsight.
Yeah, big time.
But it proved to be a big step.
Yeah, I'd been paying rent for quite a period of time, but obviously then sort of so. But what it did do, it drained obviously quite a lot of the company reserves.
Yeah.
To obviously then to get.
Yeah, they're still there, but they're in the building, so you feel a bit more vulnerable, don't you, when it's not sitting in your bank
Very
account.
much so. But we had on the back of that, we had some good years. So yeah,
love it.
And then that's the first one. 2 or 3, any others? You'd say it was like a leap. Like Mark said, obviously about like a leap forward. So premises.
Yeah, premises. And I would say another leap forward was probably, once we had the election in 2019, and then we went into, obviously I know COVID and lockdown and so forth, but the years after that were pretty good as far as business was concerned. And we had a very... the business. I mean, all estate agencies and property related with that, with the stamp duty holiday. Had a good time of it. And then in 2022, obviously, 2 years ago, was literally about exactly 2 years ago. Obviously, the change of party leader and the economics surrounding all of that, and that did cause a lot of problems. Trustonomics, I think they call it, don't they?
Yeah. And so for anyone listening out there, Tony, 30 years ago, you on your own, 2 part-time people. How did it go? What did you get up to effectively?
So in that time, then I then employed a full-time admin assistant when the part-time one left. And then I still had another, so I think I had 1.5 admin assistants. And then I employed another negotiator. Then I introduced lettings in 2008 when the banks crashed and people couldn't sell the properties. So that was a natural progression, which went well for us. And, we grew a lettings book very quickly during that period from sort of 2008 to probably about probably right up to about the tenant fee ban, I would say.
And you briefly in that you chose admin instead of negotiator. And I know obviously that's quite some time ago, but you know, a couple of
all
people
about-
out there.
Yeah, it was all about keeping the costs low, basically,
Yeah.
because I'm quite frugal, as many people will know. I suppose if I could change maybe one thing, and I don't know whether this is right or wrong, but I love what I do, and I happen to think I'm pretty good at what I do, and being able to delegate and get other people to do what I can do was a big, I do struggle with that. And I think since I've gone back now to doing with the change of business model, that's why I'm just enjoying it so much. So I think what you're saying there about maybe getting a valuer in or getting a negotiator in or having someone from the admin, that didn't hinder me at all. And I suppose personally, from that period, I suppose when I was then, I think I took 2 negs on and I think I took 2 on at the same time, actually, about 20 years ago. And I mean, we did well. I did all the valuing, they did the negging, and it worked well. But it was something very, very difficult for me to give up the valuing side, because being an estate agency for 40 years, in my opinion, I think an office is only as good as its valuer.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. So talk to us about the change of business model then. So how were you feeling before you decided to change this business model? What made you change it, and what is the new business model?
Yeah, so coming up to 2022, obviously on the back of some good years, obviously the market did sort of deteriorate somewhat. Properties, we saw rise of the cost of living, inflation rising, interest rates rising, and that obviously sort of took its toll on number of property transactions, and like everything, and this is something that really sort of got to me, is that everything around us over the last sort of 2 years was rising. Everything, all our operation costs were rising, living wage was rising, so the cost and operation costs was significant, and obviously with transactions falling away, the only thing that wasn't going up was the estate agency fees. It was almost like a race to the bottom. So we came into last year, a year ago, I sold my lettings book, not to prop the company up, nothing like that. I mean, it was just that I could see that there was an exodus of landlords coming away because of the Rental Reform Act, which has now become the Renters' Rights Act, I believe, and I wanted to sort of focus purely on sales, because sales is what I've grown up with and that's what I've always done. And we came into 2024 and I needed to make some decisions. So I took a calculated risk and sort of increased my staffing to bring in a valuer with experience to sort of go into the market and enable us to sort of increase our market share and which is something that we'd lost a little bit of. But unfortunately, it didn't work out, and I think that's no fault of the guy I employed, but I think a lot of it was down to the market at the time, time taken for getting deals over the line to exchange and completion, and it became apparent at the end of Q1 this year that I was losing a lot of money. I don't mind saying that. So he left, and then we got to the end of Q2, and things became even worse, and albeit that we were selling, but the operation costs were just so high, they were too high, and I needed to act. And obviously the rise of the self-employed agent was something that we'd seen a lot in our industry press, and with what was going on, and various platforms were obviously emerging. And I had to make some decisions as to what I was going to do. I couldn't continue to trade how I had been, losing that level of income and also more agents also coming into the area as well, not just local within our town, but also from outside the area. So it became much more of a wider playing field. So there was more competition, and obviously more competition, the fees became stressed, and so that made things very, very difficult for us, and I came to the decision that and it was biggest, toughest decision I have made in 30 years of running my own company, and I had to look at redundancies because I could not continue to trade as I was trading because it was just becoming impossible. I was losing a lot of money. So I took the difficult decision to make the staff redundant, and one of the members of staff decided that she would want to go self-employed. So we had a conversation away from the redundancy consultation process, and we discussed it, and I did some research, and I looked at it, and it was a big decision because I thought, it makes sense. It does make sense, obviously, by reducing the cost base significantly. But at 59, which is what I'm going to be next birthday, my biggest question to myself was, did I have the stomach for it?
Yeah.
Did I still have what it takes? Have I still got the buzz? Have I still got the drive? Can I be working till 10 o'clock at night? Can I be working 6-7 days a week? Yeah, we talk about a work-life balance, but the actual doing of it, that's a difference. Talking about it is one thing. Doing it is something completely different. And did I doubt myself? Yeah, I'm a human being. I did doubt myself, but I was given a lot of confidence and assurance by people close to me, both within the industry and my family, that I've got what it takes, and I've still got what it takes. And I took the decision to relaunch my company in September last month, to change it across to a self-employed model, and the feedback that I've had has just been off the scale. I didn't think for 1 minute that there would be so much support for what I've done. I've had no criticism whatsoever. The service that we've been able to now, provide, a bespoke concierge service, people love it. Donna's, who's worked with me for 12 years, she's become our first self-employed agent, and we work well together, very well together. But I have to say, and I was talking to you before we came in, that the last 6 weeks for me have been, phenomenal. And I can't say I've experienced such a buzz from the days when I was actually doing it on the tools 30 years ago.
1984, Tony.
Well, yeah, even then, but I was a junior trainee then. But when I first took the business over 30 years ago, and it's great. And the feedback that I've had from customers, clients, and it's been so positive, and it makes me, it chugs me. But
and Donna as well, 'cause, like, having worked with you guys for quite a few years, Donna has that entrepreneurial spirit inside her, outside of just doing being employed by Millbanks, with some of the stuff that she does outside of that.
Yeah.
So there was always a flair or something that was calling for her to probably get that, and a lot of people, I don't think, until they're faced with that crossroads with right, this is what's happening.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to act or you're going to do something. I think
very
it's
much so.
sparked her to go, right, let's go for it.
Yeah, and I think the thing is, what we we came at this from two different angles. I came at it from an operation cost perspective. She came at it obviously from an employee and wanting to be a self-employed agent.
Yeah.
And she wanted to be able to raise her level of customer service and I suppose own a piece of the pie, if that's the right expression. But she came at it for 2 + 2 = 4. I came at it 3 + 1 = 4. But we both arrived at the same point. And we're on this journey. The Millbanks brand is extremely strong in our area. We've had agents. I've had agents contact me who've interested in being part of the journey, and the journey will grow. There's no question about it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we've known Donna for a long time now as well. She's a legend. She'll have no problem with it. And do you think that it sort of ties in with what you were saying before about? Because on the face of it, you could go, well, there was Millbanks, and then on, like, as far as the public is concerned, nothing changed. But all of a sudden, like, everybody loves it. You guys are re-energized. But do you think that the change is what we were talking about? Like, it refocuses people back to, instead of, well, I turn up and I sort of potter away and I get paid.
Yeah.
Now they're focused on, like, no, shit needs doing.
Yeah.
People need speaking to.
Yeah, I mean, in this day and age, and I'm probably wrong for saying this, but I'm not saying everyone, okay? But in this day and age, a lot of people, they think by rocking up for 9 o'clock, finishing at 5:30, taking an hour for lunch, they've turned up.
They've done their thing.
They've done their day's work. Estate agency is completely different from that. One of the other reasons why I decided to embark on this journey, okay, it's about public perception. Now, we talked about this earlier on when we started this conversation, and I've had this feeling for quite a long time, okay, is that if you're not really in the market for something, you don't really know too much about it. So, for example, I don't know, if you're going to buy a leather jacket, for example, you see a load of different leather jackets and all that, but you don't really know, until you've done your research, you don't know which one's which.
Yeah.
Which one are you going to buy? You see them at, I don't know,
Range of different
£100,
prices, yeah.
£999 or whatever, but you don't really know. So, in my opinion, I think the public's perception of estate agents is probably quite similar, because if they haven't been looking to buy a house in the last sort of 5, 10, 15, 20 years, they just see a row of estate agency offices with lots of nice pictures in the windows, and they all do the same job. They're all on Rightmove, they all do floor plans, they all do colour pictures. Why should I choose one above the other? So they look at it like that, and then they think to themselves, okay, well, then obviously, but we can't enthuse on our service offering, our personalities, and everything else until they make contact with us. So we've got to do something different. Now, I personally, I think estate agency has become so price commoditized in the last it always has been, actually, if I'm being brutally honest with you, but I think more so now. So and so will do it X%. Oh, I can get it for this percent, or whatever, and I get that. So I think with this self-employed model, with our being different, it's about providing value, giving the customer, giving the client that value, that they perceive value, that they can see. They're going to get a call at 8, 9 o'clock at night, or a message, or an email, or whatever, as long as they've invited you to do it, that is. But it's really important, because I think that if you're then demonstrating that you can provide the value over and above what other people are doing, and people can see it, and you're doing all your socials and you're getting all your message across, I think you're then showing people and demonstrating your worth.
Yeah, nice.
And I think it's quite hard if you're doing usually when it's under a brand, the brand protects the brand, and it struggles sometimes releasing the people.
Absolutely.
But naturally, if you've got a harmonious partnership with the brand and the person, because the brand becomes naturally it's reverse, isn't it?
Yeah.
The partner's getting more of the clout of the cake.
Yeah.
But the brand's still benefiting from that. And then, like you said,
the brand
the
is enormous.
Cost of marketing, cost of being like, if you've got 10 people out there being a part of a network, and you've got 10 people's social media, 10 people who's doing their own thing, you've still got a network together in the middle. The network's naturally going to survive greater than
Definitely
just
so.
a brand. And I applaud you for being honest on the podcast about the leading up to it, because you could have easily come here and gone, do you know what? I've decided that the self-employed model is the best route, and so I flipped it, rather than actually going through the process of this is actually the reality of it, especially for our listeners and our people watching it, thinking, fuck, I'm in the same place as what Tony is right now. What do I do? One of the questions I wanted to ask you is, with that partner-led model, what made you decide to go the Millbanks way than maybe going under powered by one of the agents?
I can answer that. Basically, my brand is hugely strong. Okay, and I felt that by using my brand, I could have gone with a platform, but I didn't feel as though I wanted to do that, because obviously going with a platform, then I would be, I suppose, coming under the rules of another organisation, and I didn't want to do that. I wanted to retain my own identity, and I still wanted to be independent, and it's very difficult to work for other people or belong to another brand. So I think my particular brand is very strong in my town and my area, So that's why, and obviously, I didn't have to give anything away. I suppose that's probably another important aspect as well.
Because in most cases that would have been giving away the heart of what you've built up for the last 30 years,
Yeah.
as well as giving away the financial part to be a part of it. And it's a bit of a, like we were talking just before we got here, and I said, like, I met a guy on the train that lives in my village, and he's just sold up to another global company, big thing, and he's looking to move in the next few years out of the company. He said, I've got 2 mobile phones at him because they've told me I can't do it my way before. I've now got to do it their way. And I find it really weird because I've built this brand up for 21 years.
I think there's a big difference, isn't there, between like you're a startup company and you could go under an umbrella brand and, reduce your costs, to you're a company that's spent 30 years building your brand.
Yeah.
Do you want to give us a bit of it? Like, there's 2 very different propositions.
Yeah, and obviously, from a commission perspective, obviously we work very hard for our fees. So,
you're not going to gain listings from their brand, if you like.
No,
you're going to gain it from yours,
not.
So there are other benefits to it, and
there are other benefits, of course there are, and you have to weigh it all up.
And,
and there are a lot of platforms out there that will provide, but I felt, and obviously people that close to me that I'd spoken to about it, it became a bit of a no-brainer, really.
So it wouldn't be our podcast unless we sort of touch on the technology side of things. So I guess my question is, based on everything that we've just said and everything we've spoken about, how, estate agency changed from communication to administration, and how even your company changed maybe from, being focused on the deals and the people to people just sort of signing in and checking out. How are you going to use technology now, as I know you have a plan for it, to support your self-employed agents so they can do the bit that they're good at, as opposed to it all getting dragged back to, now Donna, or, the new version of Donna that comes along as the next self-employed agent just basically has to, after a while, just has to spend all their time doing administration, and it all goes the same way.
Yeah, so with regard to our CRM system, obviously we use the Lifecycle platform, which we have done for 4 years now, I believe it is. And obviously with that, it's an ongoing, growing CRM, so that the journeys that obviously the heavy lifting that is done behind the scenes, so to speak, will benefit agents that come on board to work under the Millbanks brand, because they'll be able to plug into it and seek the benefits there. From a personnel perspective, obviously, there's VAs, there's viewing assistants as well. So
makes sense. So if somebody is looking and thinking, maybe they're local to you, maybe they're thinking like, self-employed all seems okay, but maybe they're a bit like you, where they think, I back myself to get listings, I back myself to sell houses, but like, all the other crap that goes with it, you're going to set up a system that's going to help take a lot of that away from them, would you say? Or
I think one of the other, I said earlier about, the dynamics that would make a good self-employed agent. And I think, being a good communicator, I think is essential. I think one of the other key areas as well is social media.
Right.
Absolutely a must. And, I think if you want to become a self-employed agent, certainly under the Millbanks brand, and you don't do social media, it's probably not going to work for you. That's how I see it.
And why do you see it like that?
Because I think everyone lives their lives on social media now, and social media is such a massive tool to be able to get your message across. And I think if you understand the algorithms, which I'm still learning, with the likes of Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, X, TikTok. I've just learned TikTok now, so and I'm learning all the time. And I think if you're open to learning as well, then you're halfway there. But I think social media is absolutely vital.
So for you and for people thinking about joining the Millbanks brand, it's about them being able to communicate and build a personal brand online, and Millbanks as a brand should help them take care of the rest of it.
Pretty much so.
Yeah.
And one of the questions I've got on that is, you've established this brand and it's become that trusted brand in your area.
Yeah.
What have you got in place to ensure that stays, and you don't have random people join that you realise after 6 months that they're self-employed but they're actually destroying being a part of the network.
Yeah, so basically there'll be sort of mechanisms in place,
Yeah.
and so that everything can be sort of monitored and controlled to make sure that people are not disrespecting the brand, and that they're fulfilling all their obligations to make sure that the brand maintains its. Protecting the brand is key.
Yeah, because like we were talking offline, I've had a couple of partners models over the years who've gone for that initial onboarding process of just getting people on.
Yeah.
And then they've almost growing up and realised actually we need some sort of values and then they've gone for that process and they've found the new people after that process fits like them.
Yeah.
And then they've got this random rogue set of people that they start at the beginning thinking actually no one actually likes you and you just moan all the time and you don't really do a good service, but we had you on the initial part. And obviously it's a bit different with Donna because you've known Donna for so many years that we could tell, having chatted with Donna, she is Millbanks through and through. She's a replication on you, and that's the reason why when you decided to go down this route and pivot, she naturally would have come on that journey with you.
Yeah.
So in that new process, if you've got an idea of anyone maybe listening out who's thinking, actually, I wouldn't mind chatting to Tony, like, what's the sort of agent you're looking for? Yeah, apart from just social media, is it community based? Is it?
Yeah, I think community based is very, very important as well, to be able to sort of tune in and be aware of your surroundings, be aware of what's going on around you as far as your local communities, supporting local functions. I set up years ago my Love Attleborough page, which has got
Massive. I'm even bolder than that. I remember Donna invited me to look at it. It's huge.
Yeah, and we promote all our own properties on there, which is great. We promote local businesses. There's a lot of businesses from outside the area who want to go on it, but we don't promote them because it's about Love Attleborough, not love where you're from. And obviously we promote local events as well. We support local events, and we were club sponsors at Attleborough Town Football Club for I think 7 consecutive years as well. So we do a lot in the local community. But I think go back to your point. I think it's really important that any agent who wants to come on board is tuned into their local community and what's going on around them, and they're alive to it.
When you said, I don't know if this is the last question or not, but when you said you can teach skills, you can't teach attitude.
Correct.
It's unlikely that someone who isn't an estate agent would even be listening to this podcast, but just generally, if there were somebody that's thinking like, well, I'm all up for being involved in the community. I love getting on social media, love communication. Would you consider somebody like that as to be able to take a Millbanks license, or would you say that and then you'd train them, or do they really need to have estate agency experience in your mind?
I think I'll answer that best I possibly can. Obviously, estate agency experience is key, but then you can have estate agency experience with journey people who've sort of been to work for, I don't know, a dozen estate agents in 20 years or whatever, and probably they're not going to be for us. We're not for everyone.
Yeah.
I tell people that as well. So it is quite difficult to sort of I can kind of tell very, very quickly, normally within about sort of 10 to 20 seconds, whether someone will be a good estate agent or not, just by their personality traits, with their eyes, with their body language, how they express themselves, their tonality, and how they come across, present themselves. So, it's so I'll never say never, but I kind of have an idea as to sort of who would be good. And perhaps who wouldn't.
And I think actually we had David Long on quite a while ago, and he said the difference he found, like you said, journeymen from working in a corporate, and then he went and worked in an independent, and then he realised actually how to hustle even as an independent.
Yeah.
So probably the same from when you have people joining you, if they've come from a more corporate and want to join you.
Yeah.
It's
I used to have a rule
isn't it?
back in the day that I would never employ people that would work for other estate agents.
Right.
A long time ago.
Yeah.
Because I always wanted a blank canvas so that people would learn my habits, the way, my way of doing things, my methodology, and that's kind of I did soften over the years.
Yeah.
A lot of people will say that I have completely softened over the years, but Yeah, I probably have actually.
Love it.
Anything else, Tony?
No, it was lovely. I loved every minute of it.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Thanks, Tony. Appreciate you being on.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this Estate Agency X podcast. Can you make sure that you're actually subscribed to this podcast channel if you liked the content? It helps us massively to get better guests, and it just helps us generally. So you might think you're subscribed, but just have a double check whatever your podcast platform of preference is, that you're actually subscribed, and then that way we can continue to grow the channel and get better and better guests for you.